This meeting to order. Welcome you to the meeting, the 20th meeting of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. This committee is meeting today at 4:58 Ontario time, or Eastern Standard Time, I guess. We're to hear from the President of the Treasury Board and the officials of Supplementary Estimates 2020-2021. And unfortunately, as we've just heard, I was going to mention that to you, that unfortunately the Minister is unable to attend for reasons that are beyond his control. So we will proceed along the lines. I would like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Interpretation of this video conference will work very much like a regular committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen to either use the floor, the English, or the French. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. And when you're ready to speak, you may click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. To raise a point of order during the meeting, committee members should ensure their microphone is unmuted and say point of order to clearly get the chair's attention. In order to ensure social distancing in the committee room, if you need to speak privately with the clerk or analyst during the meeting, please email them through the committee email address. For those people who are participating in the committee room, please note that masks are required unless seated, and then physical distancing is possible. With the little bit of the change that we've had, we all have received the speaking notes in advance, and so I'd like to put forward a motion to accept those speaking notes, and then we would transition to discussions with basically the other witnesses. So the motion I'm proposing is that speaking notes presented by the President of the Treasury Board be taken as read and appended to the evidence of today's meeting. Do I have consent to do that? All in favor? I'm seeing unanimous consent. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Then with that done, we will proceed. And we have with us a number of analysts with us today. And I think we have all five, do we not, at this point, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do. All
so
five.
We have Mr. Ermuth, Ms. Cahill, Mr. Purvis, Ms. Yalkin, and Mr. Greeno. And I'm assuming you weren't expecting to have to do a presentation, so I think we'll go straight into questioning, if that's okay, unless one of you, do I see a hand up that you would like to make an opening announcement at all? Mr. Purvis, I see your hand up. Yes, please.
Mr. Chair, that's perfectly fine. We can just go right into questioning. Just to give everyone a sense of who we all are, we cover many different parts of Treasury Board Secretariat. Myself, I cover expenditure management. Ms. Cahill is the CFO. Roger Ermuth covers for the Comptroller General's office. Mr. Yalkin, of course, is the office of the Chief Human Resource Officer. And Ms. Reid, of course, is the Chief Information Officer's branch. And with that, we're ready to go.
Thank you. So with that, we will go to the first round of questions from Mr. Paul Hughes.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Hello, Minister. I hope you're healthier. First question, I'd like to come to a question that was asked on November 20th. Was there an impact analysis on the official languages for We Charity? Back then, when we asked the question, the response was not very specific. So now I'd like to know today if such an analysis was done for We Charity.
Speaking from the Office of the Comptroller General. So in terms of the question regarding the We Charity, there was no French, the annex that would normally be done for that program. The reason for that is that it did not come through as a full-blown Treasury Board submission. So the initial program that would have come through would have had an official languages assessment. What actually came through and what was decided was that the minister had the authority to make the changes to the program that allowed for the contribution agreement that was eventually signed with We Charities.
Parfait, merci.
Perfect, thank you. So I just realized the minister isn't there, so thank you for answering on his behalf. Second question, usually PSBC is supposed to obtain Treasury Board approval for all defense expenditures when it goes beyond the authority of the minister. Was such an evaluation made for the naval ships, for the combat ships?
Sorry, in terms, the question is did they seek the appropriate authorities? To my knowledge, and this is where I think the Department of Public Service. Sorry, please.
Okay, my question.
So well, usually when there are defense expenditures, when it goes beyond the ministerial limits, it has to go through Treasury Board. So my question for you is, did you do that assessment of the contract for the combat ships?
Of anything that would have gone beyond the minister's authority would have come in through Treasury Board. In terms of the combat ships, there have been multiple times where those have come through. And in terms of the Office of the Comptroller General, we would have looked at to ensure that there's policy compliance with the responsible policies.
Donc, Monsieur le Président.
All right. So, well, thank you very much, Mr. Ermuth. Mr. Chair, I would like that we submit the evaluation report that was done by Treasury Board regarding the combat ships. This should be submitted. All right. On the credits we're voting on, PHAC is asking $2.5 billion for notably buying vaccines, also including all types of contracts for buying vaccines. Is this sum only for buying vaccines, for the required vaccines, or for all contracts that were negotiated? We're talking about dozens, if not hundreds of millions of vaccines for Canadians. Can I get the breakdown, please?
Thank you for the question. Just to be clear, so that 2.5 billion, which was originally in our statutory forecast, has migrated over on the voted basis. And the total amount that we're looking at is about 9.2 billion. Of that 9.2 billion, about 8 billion is for bilateral purchase agreements pertaining to the vaccines for COVID-19. 1 billion is for strategic international partnerships. And then about 200 million is for treatments and therapeutics, such as the drug remdesivir and so forth. And so that 2.5 effectively brings us and completes the 9.2 billion envelope that exists in the system.
So can you tell me, so this $8 billion, so I see that this is all added up. So you have $8 billion for bilateral contracts with 7 companies, which we signed a contract or an agreement, because it's not clear to me. Are we paying for the vaccines that were distributed and authorized, or are we paying as well for what was reserved?
For its advanced purchase agreement, so it's effectively for as the vaccines come in and the payments go out, it's to ensure the payments are fulfilled. In terms of details about specifically the 7 that you're talking about, and the breakdown of that 8 billion, that's a question that the Public Health Agency of Canada would be better placed to answer.
But regarding Treasury Board, the approval of this envelope of $8 billion, is it for what is reserved or what we will get in the end, what we will receive? In other words, regardless of which vaccines, whether it is Pfizer or Moderna, this $8 billion, does it cover everything we need to vaccinate Canadians? or does it include supplementary vaccines that might be distributed internationally afterwards?
Is that funds to deal with supplementary vaccinations has been transferred to the Global Affairs Canada for their programming. I believe the $8 billion is to cover all the vaccines. Having said that, I think the Public Health Agency of Canada would be able to provide a better line of sight on that answer, and we'd be very pleased to get back to the committee with a precise response to Mr. Paul Hughes' question.
Thank you, Mr. Purves.
Yes.
If you would do that for us, appreciate that. Mr. Paul Hughes, thank you for your questions. We will now go to Mr. Kuzmirchuk. 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for filling in. In the 2019-2020 departmental results for TBS, it is outlined that by the end of 2019-2020, the government's overall reduction in greenhouse gas emissions was 34.6 below the 2005 levels. Can you give us examples of how the government is reducing greenhouse gas emissions in its operations?
Sure. Ms. Cahill will be pleased to answer that question.
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The government is doing many projects with a number of government departments to reduce its GHGs. And two good examples in these estimates are a project that we're doing with Transport Canada, Health Canada, and Fisheries and Ocean to first of all, with Health Canada to have a site for virtual inspections that will replace the in-person inspection. And if this is successful, this project, amongst others, will help us reduce our GHGs. There are a number of different projects that are happening, and the funding from the Central Fund for Greening Government serves to that effect.
And thank you very much for that response. And the Department of Fisheries project, is it similar to the Department of Health project? Is it about introducing more virtual opportunities?
So, no, thank you again. No, this one is more of a infrastructure project. So this is to make changes to the Bedford Institute of Oceanography, seawater heating. So what they are doing is to install a seawater source geothermal heat pump system at the Bedford Institute. So this will reduce natural gas use and GHG emissions. So this is the majority of the funding in these estimates, Mr. Chair.
Okay, terrific, wonderful. And are we, again, I know that the target is, I believe, 40% below 2005 for 2030. Is there a sense that we are on target to meet our 2030 obligations or commitments on the current pace and in the current program?
So I couldn't tell you for sure that there is a sense. Definitely, we can come back to you with a more firm answer. But through the projects we're doing, we're on a good path to reduce our GHG emissions by a large number of kilotons, if I may.
Okay, terrific. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. In the PBO noted in his report on the SUPs that notable improvements have been made in terms of which address sort of issues that this committee has mentioned in past meetings when it comes to financial transparency and openness. What measures have been introduced to sort of increase financial transparency in the estimates process?
Thank you very much for the question. It's a great question. There's one measure that was taken really in light of the budget estimates alignment initiative that was taken before, which was very much about aligning what's in the estimates with what was announced in the fall economic statement. And so what we include is in part one, a table that breaks that down, because there's some elements that we don't include in main estimates, such as tax expenditures, EI account, that you need to build back in. And given the fact that finance reports on an accrual basis, as opposed to us working on a cash basis. With respect to COVID in particular, we have been busy trying to improve the transparency for parliamentarians and Canadians as it pertains to the planned spending. And specifically, we've been looking at tagging effectively COVID measures that are included in the supplementary estimates. We provided description of all the COVID-19 legislation. When you go to InfoBase, you can actually see all the measures lined up against the same measures in the fall economic statement, and see which supplementary estimates they were approved for the authorities by voted and statutory. And finally, we do an alignment between chapters 1 and 2 in the fall economic statement with the spending spending authorities that have been identified up to date, specifically for COVID in the estimates, which amount to about 160 billion. So this is, dealing with a pandemic is new for us. It's something that we want to try to advance on the transparency side, and we're always open to comments and suggestions from Parliament as to how we can improve on that.
Yeah. Thumbs up on the GC InfoBase, by the way. Great work helping us visualize a large amount of data. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kazmierczuk. We'll go to Ms. Vignola for 6 minutes. Ms. Vignola, you're on mute.
C'est la phrase.
Yes, that is the phrase of the year. You're on mute. All right, so thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your presence here today. I have a few questions, naturally. The supplementary estimates is looking for approval for expenses of $13.4 billion for emergency expenses related to the pandemic for the vaccines, among other things. So my question is, how is it possible that supplementary estimates A or B, or even the main estimates, did not provide for enough money for research and development of a vaccine? This is not a surprise that we need to develop a vaccine and we need to invest in vaccines. We saw that the US and the UK invested massively in vaccines. So why did we not forecast this, and why do we need supplementary estimates C for this?
Ms. Vignola, it's a great question. Certainly in terms of when you step back and think about the payment authorities that we're seeking from Parliament to be able to address the vaccines, and just in the response to Mr. Paul Hughes and his question, it adds up to about 9.2 billion, and I gave that breakdown of what that is. The payment authorities have come in different forms, and because the crisis started in March and supplementary estimates A wasn't until June, Parliament approved Bill C-13, which included the Public Health Events of National Concerns Payments Act. So much of the supports that we're looking at are partially supported through what we call the statutory forecast side of the main estimates and the supplementary estimates here. But then there's the voted component. And what happened is that at the end of December, the statutory authority under the Public Health Events and National Concerns Payments Act, it expired. And so many of the initiatives that were being supported under the payment authority have just migrated over into the voted side. And that's why you're seeing it effectively listed on the voted. If you look on the statutory forecast side, you're often seeing an offsetting a reduction amount. And so on a voted basis, it seems like a very large amount that's coming late, but on a net basis, actually, there's only a couple measures that are really new, which is, 485 million for the procurement of test supplies and testing production, which is, going to provinces and territories through the provision of test kits and supplies to supplement the existing testing capacity that they have. There's 50 million effectively to support the surge in demand for distress centers during and following the COVID-19 pandemic, and 208 million, which is being used to stabilize key resources and operations in the agency. It can be a challenge to see through that, but that's why, in a way, we put this on the info base, because it's easier to track in that pane.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. This is quite enlightening. Thank you for your answer. The Treasury Board is asking $2.7 billion under Vote 15, including compensation for union members. Of this $1.7 billion, what percentage represents the amount given to the AFPC, the union employees?
It's a great question. It's one I'd have to calculate, actually. I have no objections with providing it to the committee. Mr. Yalkin, I don't know if you perhaps have that on hand, but if not, we'd be happy to get back to the committee with that answer.
Merci.
Thank you. I would like to get that information. Regardless of the amount, what will be allocated to compensate employees? Is it the gross or net amount? Because that compensation was imposed or taxed. So it's as if the government is recuperating money on this compensation for damages caused. The amount that will come out of this, or the amount that you'll... So I want to know if the amount you'll give us is before tax, or what it cost for real once the taxes were paid to the government.
Question. I'll pass it over to Mr. Yalkin. I understand there are discussions going on with the CRA, but Mr. Yalkin might have a better line of sight on that.
Sorry, I can take this question if you don't mind,
Sure.
Glenn. This is Karen Cahill, Mr. Chair. There are still discussion with, je m'excuse.
Discussions, Ms. Vignola, are ongoing with the department for the taxable damages. We have to refer to CRA. Thank you.
Qui est imposé.
Merci beaucoup. We'll now go to Mr. Green for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. And I apologize because I know that this has been touched on and I might be repeating myself here, but I'm trying to get clear on PHAC's $2.5 billion under votes 1C, operating expenditures, votes 5C, 10C to support research, development, purchases of vaccines. $2.5 billion seems like a lot of money. And I'm wondering, in terms of the breakdowns, how much of it is going to development versus purchasing? And I'm still unclear if this question has already been asked, so my apologies if it has.
So, Mr. Green, it's a great question. Like, I guess from my standpoint, I could give you a line of sight in terms of the payment authority that is being sought, and the fact that...
Can I ask you then this very particular question?
Yeah.
Has a payment authority been sought to start a Crown corporation to do our own domestic development of vaccines? Or is this money that's going all out to the private sector? Because you'll recall the money that we invested in the NRC, which gave the technology for the base science of the vaccines, have been privatized by corporations, and we haven't really watched the kind of cooperation that we thought we were going to get. And so I'm wondering, for $2.5 billion, if you look at a dollar value analysis on this, has the government sought authority to start a crown corporation on our own domestic production?
So specifically on that, we do have funding that is going to a whole host of different initiatives. And in terms of identifying specifically the amount that is going for domestic capacity and how much of that is listed
Sorry,
here.
When we talk about specificity, I want to get specific. Has the government sought a payment authority to start a crown corporation for domestic production?
That I would have to get back to you specifically on that. Like the creation of a crown corporation.
That would be a specific type of financial authority, correct? Different than, say, doling this money out to the private sector, or to, like, I'm looking at the scale of $2.5 billion. And at this stage of the pandemic, how we haven't nationalized domestic production while we're buying vaccines at $35 a pop is beyond me. So while we're kind of negotiating this $2.5 billion, the question still remains, how much priority has this government at this juncture thought about or explored in our own domestic? When I say domestic, I don't just mean Canadian companies, but a crown corporation or a nationalized program.
No, I understand the question. I'm just not able to give you an answer.
Can I ask,
right
though,
now,
just for future questions, Mr.
Sure.
Purvis, if they were to start that direction to do a crown corporation, and in theory the Treasury Board were to come to this committee and I were to ask you that, would that be flagged as a separate type of financial authority than the financial authority to distribute money out generally to the private sector? Would that require a different kind of thing that I'd be able to pick up in a report?
It all depends on it all depends on how organizations are structured and whether they're appropriation dependent. If they're effectively provided statutory authorities that are separate and distinct and are not appropriation dependent, that would be outside our realm. We're in the business really of identifying all the departments that are appropriation dependent and the funding that they're seeking, and being able to provide answers to the best of our ability on what that funding is going towards. In terms of the actual,
save that question then for a future date, and I will bring you back to this one to get clear. When we talk about the difference between a grant and a contribution, are the contributions, do they have with them some kind of equity or some kind of IP share? Is there anything that we get when we do a contribution that is separate and different from the parameters around a grant? Because when I hear grant, what I hear is money that we just give away, no strings attached. When I hear contribution, I hear that there's a relationship, a partnership. So is a contribution a partnership, or is it just another word for another grant?
Hi, it's Roger Ermith, Office of the Controller General. In terms of under the policy of transfer payments, there are two main mechanisms for grants and contributions. The main difference is in that with a grant, most of the work goes into eligibility upfront in terms of a recipient receiving funds. Thereafter, there is minimal to no sort of reporting. Basically, you meet the criteria, the money goes. On a contribution, there is more reporting, or maybe some check-ins, release of expenditures over time.
So as a supplementary to that, I apologize, I'm dwindling down here. I recall the word contribution agreements being used with the WE scenario. Are contribution agreements used for sole source? Are they a separate type of procurement that allows for the government to distribute money in a different way than it would under procurement strategies?
So it is
typical policies.
It is different than a procurement process covered by a different set of policies. But in terms of sole source, that's really more of a contracting term. I think when you have to look at the program, the requirements for the program, what it is that the department says they're going to do in terms of the assessment of proposals that they receive, et cetera.
This has been very helpful. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Green. We will now go into our second round. And we will start with 5 minutes with Ms. Harder.
Awesome. Thank you. My first question has to, well, I guess the minister's not here. I'd love to address it to him. So I'll let you decide who's best to answer it. The federal government in recent years has awarded internal contracts to Cisco Systems. There's been a number of articles written about that. And of course, those contracts have been to the tune of about $260 million. You know, it was stated that, quote, there's a pattern of dependency by Ottawa on a single network provider that has all but shut out competing bids, end quote. And so I'm just wondering if you're worried at all that there is a lack of diversity in the in the offer of networking, and given the costs of these systems.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. Ms. Reid or Ms. Cahill, I think, are better placed to answer this question. Thank you.
I believe, Glenn, it would be Ms. Reid.
Yes. Hi. Thank you very much for the question. To be honest, I think that Shared Services Canada would probably be best placed in terms of the distribution of contracts in respect of networking capacity within the Government of Canada. But certainly that is a consideration in terms of ensuring the ability of the networks to be robust and to have backup capacity.
So, Ms. Reid, sorry, but is Minister Duclos' department, is he not ultimately responsible for this file?
For Shared Services Canada?
Yes.
No, that would be under the Minister of Digital Government.
And the Minister of Digital Government is Minister Murray, and she falls under Minister Duclos.
Yes, but from a departmental perspective, Shared Services Canada actually would have that information, but we would be happy to follow up and provide that information back to the committee.
So you're not able to answer any questions with regards to Cisco?
I'm not able to answer any questions with regard to Cisco at this time, no.
That's convenient. Within the supplementary estimates, it was announced that, or it stated that $3.8 million under vote 1 is being put aside for the Canadian Digital Service to provide critical digital products and services related to COVID-19. I'm just wondering which products and services will be provided through the Canadian Digital Service. What is that $3.8 million being used for?
Thank you for the question. This is Karen Cahill, so I'll take this one. Actually, most of the $3.8 million will be used to support, and as you know, in conjunction with Health Canada, develop the COVID application, the COVID alert application. So, and also the money is being used to add new features to the application itself.
Okay. Within the subsidies, there's $395,221 that is being allocated for funding for the Black Entrepreneurship Program. Am I correct in stating this figure?
I believe so. I'm just, can you tell me exactly which department you're referring to on that front? I think it's for ACOA, correct me if I'm wrong, but and SEDQ as well.
Okay.
So it's a horizontal item that's covered
Yes.
under 2 different portfolios, right? And you know, I could speak to the broader initiative if you'd like.
No, I just find it interesting that it's just it's a little more than $300,000. It's $395,000 that's being allocated to this program, and the government has definitely used this program as a massive opportunity to virtue signal. But under $400,000 is actually what's being invested,
Virtue
and
signal.
so it just
Holy Christ!
Chair,
Virtue signal.
Chair.
Jesus.
Mr. Green,
Oh.
please.
I'll trust that that's not being taken from my time. That was extremely rude of Mr. Green.
No, it will not take from your time.
Thank you.
Ms. Harder, the typically when departments come in through supplementary estimates, in the case of a COA or a SEDQ, it's for the funding that they need, incremental funding that they need up and beyond what they've received. So, you know, there has been an announcement of 93.1 million over 2021 and to 23-24, and up to 221 million in partnership with Canadian financial institutions to support this initiative, which includes an ecosystem fund of 53 million, a knowledge hub of 6.5 million, surveying and analysis of surveys of 2 million.
So what is the additional $395,000 needed for?
This is to support the ecosystem fund component that these organizations are involved with, and of course that fund supports
what does that
Black-led
mean?
businesses.
Like, ecosystem is a nice word, but what does that mean? Like, ultimately, what difference is this making in the lives of Canadians?
And thank you. If you could, Ms. Harder, if you could quickly answer that, I'd greatly appreciate it.
I like it's to support Black-led business organizations across Canada by funding their business development services, and in particular, if you'd like, we could get back with a more detailed response on that to the committee. Happy to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Purvis. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. We'll now go to Mr. Johari for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Purvis and your team. Good to have you back, and please extend our regards to the minister, and looking forward to having him full health and back at the committee again. Mr. Purvis, you started actually talking about horizontal items. I understand in the supplementary estimate C, we have about 8 horizontal items. I'm interested in about 2 or 3 of them, but can you give us an idea of what's included in there? And specifically, I'm very much like to get some feedback around I believe it's a $55 million funding for the Integrity of Canada Borders and Asylum System that's broken into 2 pieces. So if you can start commenting on that one, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure. So just to give people a sense of what horizontal initiatives are, like whenever we table a supplementary estimates, if there's funding for an initiative that covers multiple areas and multiple departments, we always list it as a horizontal initiative, and we try to flag that as part of our transparency. In terms of that specific initiative, it's used to provide emergency housing and support services to improve the interoperability of various information technology systems related to asylum systems in order to increase administrative efficiency and the speed of processing claims. So of that 55.6 million, Mr. Johari, that you're referring to, about 30.1 million is going to the Canada Border Services Agency. It's 6 million is going to this Canada Border Services Agency, to the Department of Citizenship and Immigration, about 22.3 million, to the Immigration Refugee Board, about 1.9 million, and of course, and then of course, under Department of Citizenship and Immigration and Shared Services Canada, there's additional amounts of about 3 million in particular pertaining to some of these.
Can you comment on the 6 million that's going to Canada Border Service Agency? What is this for?
Sure. I'm wondering if Rod Greeno, who's my colleague, has that open to be able to be a little quicker than me on the dash.
Yeah, if we can be quick, because I want to go to the Regional Air Transport Initiative. It's just about $44 million, trying to get some feedback around what that money is for. But if we can quickly talk about 6 million.
So of that amount, effectively, it's part of a broad range of initiatives to increase the capacity and efficiency of the system. Specifically, that amount is going to project definition and early implementation of the new automated IT security screening system. In terms of milestones, they expect by March for project definition completion. And then they're expecting effectively the broader project to be implementation to be completed in June of 2022.
Thank you. We also have another $44 million for funding for regional air transportation Air Transportation Initiative. About 10 million of it is for Atlantic Canada. What are these? What is specifically are these funds earmarked for?
Yeah, sure. So this is funding intended to promote reliable and affordable access to critical regional and local airport and air carrier operations and services. So each organization provides grants and contributions to municipalities, provinces, and territories, and not-for-profit organizations, businesses, and Indigenous organizations to help maintain essential air transportation services that support the local economy.
Are any of these COVID related, or are these just a normal, initiatives that we had that?
We have them tagged as COVID related because they are as a reaction to effectively the COVID initiative and the disruptions that have impacted that industry.
Yeah, and quickly with about 15 seconds, we have about 31 million for violence against Indigenous women and girls. Can you give us the major portion of that is about 29 million? Can you shed some light on that? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So these are operating expenditures and contributions that are intended to support the community-led solutions to reduce violence and address harms associated with attendance at federal Indian Day schools, address service gaps and wage disparities in 46 emergency shelters, and to support reserve shelters used by Indigenous women and children.
Thank you, Mr. Purves and Mr. Johari. We'll go now to Ms. Vignola for 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Maximum of $2 million. Credit 5 to deal with the requests made for SERB for students. How many requests are pending? Why is it pending? Are there other fees that could be added, or is it?
I hate to interrupt. I just didn't get the beginning. Of your question. I'm very sorry.
Pas de problème, Monsieur Purvis.
That's fine, Mr. Purvis. So there's a maximum amount of $8 million that is credit 5 in order to deal with pending requests for the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit for students. How many requests are pending or are waiting to be decided on, and what amounts are being used to recover fraudulent amounts or amounts that were received in a fraudulent manner?
So Ms. Vignola, I think what you're referring to effectively is our vote 5, our central vote 5, if I understand correctly, and you're referring to the 8 million that effectively was in there. And so just to back up, like our vote 5 effectively is intended to provide a bridge to the next supply bill if a department has an urgent cash need to be able to extend. And so in this regard, what happened was there were some recipients that were in need of funding, and that vote 5 allocation went to provide for those recipients. I'm just wondering whether my colleague Rod Greeno actually happens to have the number of recipients that received that, which I think is the other part of your question, if I heard correctly.
Hi, Glenn. It's Rod Greeno coming on. So I don't have the number that have received, but there were about 4,000 claims made previous to December 31 that were still outstanding. That's what the 8 million is to cover as these claims are processed.
Thank you, Mr. Greeno. And thank you, Ms. Vignola. We'll go now to Mr. Green for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. PHAC is requesting $1.7 billion under Vote 1C for operating expenditures to support the rapid bulk procurement of essential personal protective equipment and the necessary medical equipment and supplies on behalf of the federal government, provinces, and territories. How much personal protective equipment purchased with this funding would go to the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile?
I don't have the answer to that question, Mr. Green. I wish I could give you that breakdown, and I'd be happy to.
When they submit their subs and they ask for this spending authority, are there briefing notes and documentations that would give them a rationale for the need of this funding?
Yes. So we
so in that rationale, would this purchase of this $1.7 billion, would that be refilling the millions of dollars that were thrown out in 2019? Is that to supplement the closure of the 3 warehouses for the National Emergency Stockpile, or is that like above and beyond that?
So this effectively was a part of an allocation that was identified early on as part of the public health events of National Payments Act. And as a consequence of that act expired at the end of December, this voted amount that to continue the purchases related to these initiatives. Now, what
would you not agree that in the definition, Mr. Purvis, Mr. Purvis, your answer is
I'm happy to walk through.
It's pixelated, so I can't hear it, and I'm not interested in the walkthrough. I'm interested in the answer, and what I'm interested in is finding out in the rationale for the approval of this $1.7 billion. How much of it went to the NES? Certainly, that would be in your briefing documents.
I don't have that specifically. I do have the breakdown of the type of commodities that has been used to support this initiative.
May I ask you 2 questions in short order, Mr. Purvis? 2 questions in short order. Are you familiar with the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile? Just a yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. Do you not agree that the description of the purchasing under this category would fit the description of the purpose of the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile?
What you're asking for effectively is just the federal stockpile. I don't have the breakdown between the federal and goes to the provinces and the territories, Mr.
No, the
Green.
National Emergency Strategic Stockpile was originally
I'm happy to go back.
It was originally stocked to provide everybody in an emergency, and the federal government shut down 3 warehouses in 2019 on the eve of a pandemic. We haven't forgotten about that, and we will be getting back to that in short order. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. We'll now go to Mr. McCauley for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, Mr. Purvis, and others. It's good to see you again. Question for Mr. Purvis. How is TBS tracking COVID spending, department by department? You talked about publicizing the authorities and planned spending, but the actual spending, the cash that's gone out the door, how are you tracking that?
So different departments, of course, are responsible for their implementation of the initiatives.
The data is making its way to TBS, is it not?
Well, through the CFMRS, certainly, as they report, departments report, and so forth, and we have our own
frequently are they reporting
informal tracking that we're trying to get departments to provide us with a sense of a rough sense of what they're doing on the basis of when information is available. So for transfers, for instance, it's much easier for departments to report that because it's easier to be able to track that. But with respect to programs that have implementation issues and so forth, it is more lagged because it's based on the CFMRS system, right? With the Receiver General.
The department CFOs, are they reporting the spending to Treasury Board?
So departmental CFOs, on an informal basis, we have started asking them what it is that they are spending. That is an initiative that we're working through with the CFO community. We don't have a system that talks to all the other systems that you could just press a button and be able to get this
I understand
instantaneously.
And I'm glad you were talking about trying to be more transparent to parliamentarians. about various programs, whether it's GC Info Base and that. And in that light, Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce a matter at hand motion in this regard, and I'll read it into the record right now, that the Treasury Board Secretariat provide the committee with all monthly COVID-19 expenditure reports and COVID spending data as disclosed by the chief financial officers of all respective departments. They provide this committee this information to the committee no later than March 17, 2021, and then update this committee on a monthly basis by the 15th of the month. While I respect that there's info on GC Info Base, it's not actual spending, it's the authorities or planned spending. I think we owe it to this committee, but also to Canadians to see the actual spending on COVID.
Thank you, Ms. McCauley. Any discussion to that matter at hand motion? Seeing, let me just check here. Seeing none, I will call. Sorry, Ms. Vignola, I see your hand up. I apologize, I did not see that.
Would it be possible to receive an email text of this motion, the written text of this motion?
Mr. McCauley.
I can get it to Paul in a bit. I'll send it to Mr. To our clerk.
So while
right
Mr.
now.
McCauley is doing that, I see Mr. Fergus's hand is up. Mr. Fergus.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's really important. I would like to support what Mrs. Vignola just said. It would be important to have a French written text as well, so that we can see and read the motion. It would be good if we could have a quick translation and share this, please, with the members.
It was translated for you. As I was reading into the record, as matter at hands are. This is a continued trick by people on your side, Mr. Fergus, to try and delay things. We've seen it repeatedly, but it was translated as I read into the record.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley. I will reread the motion. Sorry, I saw Mr. Kazmierczuk. Did you have your hand up there?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to request that the motion be reread if possible.
Certainly. Actually, Mr. McCauley, can you reread the motion, please?
The Treasury Board Secretariat provide the committee with all monthly COVID-19 expenditure reports and COVID spending data as disclosed by the chief financial officers of all respective departments. They provide this to the committee no later than March 17, 2021, and update us monthly by the 15th of the month, each and every month.
Mr. Chair, I apologize for intervening, but I have received the French text of the motion. If you wish, I can read that into the record now.
Please, Mr. Clerk, if you would do that, I think that would be also beneficial for those in the committee. Thank you.
Le texte français est le suivant, que dans le cadre de son étude sur le budget supplémentaire des dépenses C 2020-2021, le comité oblige la production du secrétariat du Conseil du Trésor de tous les rapports mensuels sur les dépenses COVID-19 et les données sur les dépenses COVID-19 telles que divulguées par les agents financiers supérieurs de tous les ministères respectifs et que ces documents soient déposés au comité au plus tard le mercredi 17 mars 2021. I have the text in English as well. I can try and distribute it to the members by email now if the committee wishes.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. While that is happening, I see that Mr. McKinnon, your hand is up. Sorry, you're on mute, Mr. McKinnon.
I was going to say I'm happy to have Mr. Macaulay speak to his motion if he so wishes. Oh, you're okay. So my only point, I think, is that, of course, this information either has, is, or will appear in various formats in the past, the current, or in the present, or in the future. But it's unlikely to be the Treasury Board Secretariat that is the source of such information. Of course, the public accounts will be published, to state the obvious. Of course, the Department of Finance regularly reports on these matters. I don't know about Mr. Macaulay, but there's nothing more transparent than government spending. If he's just perhaps setting our friends here from the Treasury Board Secretariat on a bit of a make work project that will be resolved in short order in any event by the regular course of financial reporting.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. I see that Mr. Macaulay, his hand is up. Mr. Macaulay.
Thanks. I am not too keen on waiting a year or so for it to show in the public accounts. I am making the assumption that TBS has this information, or it's being supplied to TBS by the CFOs, and I think we owe it upon ourselves to have this information. I'll give you a perfect example. We found out under COVID spending that Fisheries and Oceans spent over $100,000 of taxpayers' money to put up people at a luxury millionaire resort on Vancouver Island, which had absolutely nothing to do with COVID at all, as they've stated. I'd like to see how much other taxpayers' money is either being misspent under the guise of COVID spending or the actual spending itself. I mean, the whole reason this committee in Parliament exists is overseeing spending. I would see no reason why under transparency and open by default, we would not welcome this information.
Thank you, Mr. Macaulay. Mr. Kazmierczak.
Yes, just to sort of reiterate what my colleague, Mr. McKinnon, had stated, that I do feel very strongly that this is a matter that I think is best directed at finance and not TBS. This is not a TBS matter. And that's my first objection. But my second objection is I'd really like to ask Mr. Macaulay to make a case for why we would go beyond the regular schedule of financial reporting that is an expected and that's on the calendar in terms of financial reporting that happens on a regular basis, and why the need to have a month by month account when again these are part of a regular calendar, regularly scheduled accounting of expenditures. I'm just wondering what's the argument for going outside of that regular process.
I would ask,
Mr. Kazmierczak. I see that Mr. Macaulay's hand is up.
I would ask, what's the reason to hide this? We are not seeing it on GC Infobase. We've asked in the past. We've been told by TBS at previous meetings, oh, it's all on GC Infobase, but that's the authorities and plan spending, not the actual cash. I think we owe it to Canadians. There's untold billions being spent, and I think we owe it to Canadians as members of parliaments, or members of parliament, sorry, to see this spending.
Thank you. Mr. McKinnon, I see your hand is up.
Well, let's just disabuse Canadians of the notion that they're not going to see this spending. Mr. Macaulay, you know much better than that. There is a reason why we return to this committee to examine witnesses on estimates and supplementary estimates on multiple occasions. There's a reason why our financial reporting systems are set up as they are, and there's a reason why real-time reporting of finances and spending is not possible in an enterprise as large as the Government of Canada. I know Mr. Macaulay, of course, knows that. I know that history has yielded literally dozens of mechanisms to ensure the financial transparency that he hopes to achieve here today. What I would submit is that forcing officials to create new instruments and new ways of doing financial reporting, which is really only reinventing the wheel, is just to make work project for public servants who are extremely busy getting us through a pandemic. He's looking for financial reporting by the very people who are working right now to help us manage our way through a pandemic, who are buying vaccines, who are supplying PPE, who are doing the work,
Mr. McCauley, order.
who are doing the work of getting Canada and getting Canadians through this pandemic. Those are the very people that he is targeting with this motion, and having them create new and strange financial reporting tools that the government is ill prepared and not set up to provide. And as such, Mr. McCauley, I think you know this. In fact, I know you know this, and I know you know that these kinds of dilatory maneuvers here at committee are not the kind that are going to serve Canadians in the long run.
Well, thank you, Mr. McKinnon. I saw Mr. Fergus's hand next, and then Ms. Harder after that. So, Mr. Fergus.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't want to repeat everything that my colleague, Mr. McKinnon, just said, but I'm a member of the Public Accounts Committee, and this is specifically the type of analysis that we do when the Public Accounts Committee sits. We receive the financial statements from all departments, and we are provided analyses by the Auditor General's office. Mr. McCauley is a seasoned MP. He's an experienced MP. He's been sitting on both sides of the aisle at the House of Commons, and I am certain, I'm sure that he is fully aware that the Public Accounts Committee will receive this data. My colleague, Mr. Green, who sits with me on this committee, we spend a lot of time reviewing the financial statements of the government and the public accounts to make sure that amounts are spent in an accurate, that there's an accurate account of how money was spent. And all colleagues, our colleagues at Public Accounts, and we have a wonderful tradition, and we unanimously look at these public account statements regularly, and we make sure that the work is well done.
Monsieur.
If Mr. McCauley insists on tabling this motion that will simply force our very hardworking public servants to find new work that is basically the same work being done in another committee. Well, for my part, Mr. Chair, I would like to know if it's possible through you, but I would like to ask a question to our committee clerk. Doesn't this, or isn't this more in the wheelhouse of public accounts than our committee? And we have at the House of Commons great parliamentary tradition, to be specific, by virtue of which we don't double up on the work being done by another committee. There's no overlap needed because another committee is doing that work. We don't need to reinvent the wheel in our committee. So my question for you, Dr. Kitchen, if you could ask that question to the clerk, I would like some clarification on my query.
Fergus, And I'm just looking at the clerk to see whether he feels comfortable in answering that question. And
from a substantive,
so
what I can say, Mr. Chair, is only from a procedural point of view. From a substantive point of view, you'd have to speak to the analyst, and I know Raphael has her hand up. Ultimately, what I would say from a procedural point of view is that if the chair's ruled the motion in order, then the chair's ruled that the motion is order and it's before the committee. The committee can then consider it as it would any other motion that the chair has ruled in order, and then can amend it, vote on it, decide on it. With regard to whether the substance is actually, or the content is actually within the mandate of the committee, I'm probably the wrong person to ask, so I would refer over to Raphael, who would be able to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And if the analyst feels comfortable in answering that, if Raphael, you would have any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to comment in French. Donc, si vous...
So if you look at the mandate of the committee's mandate is to look into the presentation and content of all budgetary or all budget documents, and expenses related to COVID are budget-related documents, then yes, it would fall within the purview of the OGGO committee.
Oh,
Can I just make one quick comment?
Mr. McCauley, I've actually got Ms. Harder, then you, and then Mr. Kazmierczuk. So we'll go to, if you don't, we'll let Ms. Harder go first.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this matter at hand is actually quite simple, and that is to say that the mandate letter of every single minister within this government states the same thing, and that is this, I directly quote, I, being the Prime Minister, expect us to continue to raise the bar on openness, effectiveness, and transparency in government. This means a government that is open by default. To repeat, open by default, which means that every single Liberal member sitting at this table should be facilitating the procurement of this document and this information that has been asked today. And instead, they're arguing against it. That's not open by default. The government should make this information available, and it should be accessible to this committee. It's totally appropriate. Be open, be transparent. That's what it says in the mandate letter.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. Mr. McCauley.
Question, I'll pose it to Mr. Irmuth. Does this data already exist? We hear Mr. McKinnon go on that it was going to grind the government to a halt and stop vaccine procurements and everything if this information was made available. I believe it's already existing. Can you confirm that for us and easily shared?
So Mr. Chair, I mean, we've had ongoing discussions with departments around gathering information in terms of that this will be the type of questions that have come up. In terms of, you know, some of the work that we have done and the approach that we have taken, my colleague, Mr. Purvis, in terms of looking at the measures, the focus has been on looking at measures up until this point. But messages have gone out to departments saying, in anticipation of transparency and questions from Canadians and parliamentarians, that there would be at some point a request to bring this information in. So I think in terms of, you know, gathering, collating, you know, the question becomes, you know, it's doable. Some of the information will be readily available. The question is to what extent is it consistent across departments? So again, you know, anything is possible if the committee is asking us. The question is going to be timing and the extent to which we can live up to the depth of the request at a specific time versus, you know, as we get closer to year-end reporting. I presented public accounts, so I mean, we do have some of this information that will come in more detail at that point. Mm-hmm. But again, it becomes what the committee, I guess, tasks us to do and what we can do.
And my understanding, you have all of this because it was brought up a year ago in your CFO meeting.
We have all of which, sorry?
The information, the spending information that I'm asking for.
Again, the question really becomes to what extent, like, what is specifically, so again, Mr. Chair, there was a question, I believe it was question 172, where some of this information came out. So absolutely, there's some detailed information related to that. Departments are or should be tracking, the expenditures related to measures and some of those
Perfect.
things.
So we have the information already.
The hard part is going to be, again, some of the roll-up stuff. But again, the question is to what extent and to what level of the specifics of that request and the amount of time to pull that together.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley. Mr. Kazmierczak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for me, the fundamental question is, with what is Mr. McCauley not getting under the current sort of system? I mean, we're seeing reports that are published on a regular basis, and the information is contained therein. In addition to that, it provides the folks gathering the information the opportunity to make sure that the information is sound. I think that's something that's important to keep in mind, is the quality of the information that's contained in those regular reports, which provides us an opportunity to make good policy and good judgments, because we know that the information has been checked and double checked and due diligence has been made. And so, again, the fundamental question that I have that Mr. McCauley hasn't answered is, what is he not getting from the current?
What I'm not getting is what available. You're trying to hide and why you're trying to filibuster
Mr. McCauley,
public spending.
Please, Mr. Kazmierczak, you have the floor.
Yeah, no, it's I yield the floor because, again, I'm looking for that answer. I haven't seen it. I just, again, just to reiterate, I have the floor, Mr. McCauley. Just to reiterate what Mr. McKinnon had stated, we have hardworking officials here that are focused at the task at hand. We have an enormous challenge here that we're dealing with during the pandemic under incredibly stressful situations. You haven't made the case that this is something that is absolutely necessary, and that's what I'm looking for. Again, I'm open to your ideas as always, but I'm looking for you to make the case that changing the normal course of reporting is required, because you're not getting what you're looking for. That's the case that I need to be made.
Thank you, Mr. Kazmierczak, and I believe you were asking that question for Mr. McCauley to possibly answer to. So, Mr. McCauley, do you have an answer?
It's very clear my colleagues across the way are just trying to filibuster a block. We've heard from Mr. Ermeth. Most of this information already exists. I know it's getting reported monthly already from the CFOs. It was very little work to collate it and publish it to this committee. Our oversight is spending. Our oversight is taxpayer or expenditures on behalf of the taxpayers. Simply getting access to planned spending or authority spending is not adequate. I'm ready to put it to a vote. If my colleagues around the table agree, then I think we should move on.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. McCauley. I do see one more hand up, Ms. Vignola. Ms. Vignola, we can't seem to hear you. Is there? And try again.
Oh, qu'est-ce qu'on m'entend?
There you are. Good.
Can we hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Great. All right. I'll try to summarize. Let's see if I understood correctly. So Mr. McCauley wants to have monthly reports. And then we have I just want to make sure I pronounce his name correctly. Mr. Ermeth says that we have part of that information. Mr. Fergus says that public accounts receive information as well. So the information does exist. But the question seems to be about delays or how long it's going to take to get in the information. Maybe, March 17 is next week. But if I understand correctly, the information does exist. It's the question of sharing it from one committee to another. Did I understand correctly? Did I hear correctly? Asks Madame Vignola.
Yes, I believe so. Okay, Ms. Vignola, I see no other hands up. Is there consent to adopt this motion? And if not unanimous, then I will call on the clerk to call for a vote. First off, unanimous to approve this? Do I see dissension?
No.
Is there no?
No.
Oh, thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Okay, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One moment, please. For the benefit of all members, I just want to make sure that I have the correct text of the motion that Mr. McCauley read. I would like to reread it to ensure that it is correct. Mr. McCauley, if you can please confirm. The text I have is that in the context of its study of the Supplementary Estimate C 2021, the committee send for from the Treasury Board Secretariat all monthly COVID-19 expenditure reports and COVID-19 spending data as disclosed by the Chief Financial Officers of all respective departments, and that these documents be provided to the committee no later than Wednesday, March 17, 2021, and then update this committee on a monthly basis by the 15th of the month. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right. The question is on the motion in the name of Mr. McCauley. Mr. McKinnon.
No.
Mr. Johari.
Oppose.
Mr. Kosmierczak.
Opposed.
Mr. Bertina.
No. Opposed.
Miss Ian.
No.
Miss Harder.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes, thank you.
Monsieur Paul Huss.
Oui, merci.
Madame Vignola.
Oui.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the results are yeas pour 5, nays contre 5. It's a tie vote.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and I vote yes. So with that, it's carried. And I'm just looking, thank you, as we move forward. And I want to thank the witnesses for bearing with us as we go through this. We are actually, I see we still have one more in this round in Mr. McKinnon in asking questions. And so, Mr. McKinnon, you have 5 minutes. And then once we're done, just as we look at time, just so for clarification, when we're looking at time, and we thank the witnesses and the interpreters for being here, that we will finish after Mr. McKinnon's 5 minutes. So, Mr. McKinnon, 5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Not speaking for any public servants, but this motion that just passed with a deadline of 7 days hence for information that requires double, triple, and quadruple checking and translation in 7 days from now is not only dilatory but borderline abusive. And I want to apologize on behalf of certainly the members of my party on this committee to all public servants who are going to have to work 24/7 to provide that information. That is, this is an appalling order and that we've just imposed on public servants. And when we have financial transparency instruments already in place, this is, I can't imagine anything, frankly, more dilatory or abusive towards public servants. But that having been said, I want to thank our friends from the Treasury Board Secretariat for being here today. Je sais que
I know that you're our partners. You're the partners in creating the white paper on official languages. And I'm not sure whom amongst you can answer my question, but can you tell me how Treasury Board participated in the development of the white paper on official languages?
So yes, I would be very happy to, Mr. Chair, to respond to that question. We worked very closely with our colleagues at Canadian Heritage and also the Department of Justice to develop a number of the proposals which evidently were made public in the document of intent that was published a few weeks ago. And so there were a number of proposals in there that we were, our role was critical in developing, including those that relate to the role of Treasury Board in providing oversight, as well as a number of the administrative measures, including an increased focus on qualification standards, training for public servants, and many others as well too.
So what would you say are the main objectives of the Treasury Board Secretariat? What are the files or the areas you would feel most strongly in advancing in the context of the upcoming revision of the Official Languages Act?
I think there's a number of areas. It's always hard to identify those of which we are the most enthusiastic. But the ones that I would say I think hold the most promise for public servants and for also I would say Canadians generally to enhance their access to the public service relate first to the work that is planned on the qualification standards. So, Mr. Chair, for the members who aren't familiar, the qualification standards are essentially the qualification standards are the requirements that are set down for official language capabilities in the public service. So the government has stated its intent that they be revised, and they would be revised with an idea to, or with a view to improving the access of Canadians to jobs in the public service, the progress of public servants who are within the public service already as they augment their linguistic capabilities. And also the ability to recognize external standards as well too, such as the DELF and the DELF, in order to facilitate the integration of Canadians who have linguistic capabilities easily into the public service.
Et toujours dans l'optique.
And in the same vein, Mr. Yelkin, to ensure that that both official languages can flourish and that both official languages can be used within the public service.
Tout à fait.
Yes, of course. Mr. Chair, there is a specific focus on the qualification standards, and they have to meet the needs of the various positions within the public service for officials to better serve the Canadian population in the official language of their choice. Excellent. Well, congratulations for your participation in that, especially during COVID. I know that all of the public servants in the national capital and in Francophone communities throughout the country are looking forward to the modernization of these provisions for both official languages to flourish, because that's an essential element of the representation of our officials and government institutions, and to provide services to Canadians, but also for the work life of our public servants, because someone always should be able to use the language of their choice internally during formal and informal exchanges. Thank you.
And thank you very much for your question and time. I appreciate that. With that said, we've now come to the end of the round, and in light of time, if we were to start another round, it would add completely to the meeting. And so what I'm just looking to make certain that we have consensus with the meeting to end, or would we can go a little bit longer if we have to. Can I see a thumbs up for continuing for one more round? I'm seeing just one thumb up, two thumbs up. I'm not seeing any others, so.
Monsieur le Président, point d'ordre,
Mr. Chair, point of order. Before we close, and through you, I would like to tell Mr. McKinnon that the motion was voted by the committee members, and if he wanted an amendment, he had to move it. We're not asking for abusive work from our officials, but we want the information. Comments such as those and always to blame the opposition because we're doing our work. I'd also like to remind him that the government hasn't tabled a budget since March 2019. Yes, we can blame a lot of things on the pandemic, but we do our work. We're not abusing from anyone. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry, yes, Mr. Green.
I mean, I would concede to Mrs. Vignola if she's looking to speak to that point, but I do have an exception to that point. And you know, in light of the editorial, the diatribe after our vote, I want to just bring attention to this committee that if this government was interested in not abusing the public sector, then they wouldn't tax the damages on the Phoenix pay scandal. Like, that's abusive. You know, the fact that they're going to tax the damages that have been awarded by the courts on the Phoenix pay and then come to us and talk about how files they already have and can simply release to us is somehow abusive, is just like beyond the pale and speaking in massive hyperbole, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Green. And Ms. Vignola, you did have your hand up, and as I've allowed others to have a quick say, if you would like to, if not, I see you're waving. Thank you. And I'm not seeing consensus to continue with, so therefore I will declare that first of all, I want to thank the witnesses for being with us today. Mr. Pervez, Mr. Irmuth, Ms. Reed, Ms. Cahill, Mr. Yalkin. Thank you all for bearing with us today. Oh, sorry, Mr. Greeno, I miss you. I apologize for that. I do want to thank you all for bearing with us. We trust that the minister, that all is well with the minister, and that that everything transpires appropriately and timely for him. And want to thank you all for being here. And with that said, I declare the meeting adjourned.
Thanks, Chair.